we're going to move on to, basically, we're going to break down each of the 5 emotions, and we're going to try to create kind of a model or a framework for each emotions that you could almost use. The goal or purpose here is to help you use that when playing poker or outside the tables. And so we're going to build a framework together here. And if we start with happiness, enjoyment, still having the body heat map on the slide, in what situations do we experience happiness, enjoyment in poker or when playing poker? So when do we experience enjoyment and happiness in poker? Winning. There you go. Playing well. Yep. Playing well, yeah, playing correctly. Knowing where I am in spots, so like this, I think that's basically being in the zone. Like everything is easy, everything is frictionless. Being with people I like when playing live, yeah. So enjoying the company, enjoying the, yeah. So winning, playing well, in the zone, I'll keep those. Feeling in control, yeah. In the zone, feeling in control. Yeah, I like those answers. Successful bluff, I'd put that in, I guess, playing well. Maybe that's more results oriented. But success in general, winning, yeah, okay. So now we kind of have those situations that arise that makes us feel happy. Yeah, successful bluff cash yet. Yeah, bad beating people, even winning when you don't deserve it, sometimes brings happiness and joy. But I'd argue that some people they don't enjoy winning when they bad beat people. They prefer to play well. Wow. So we have those situations. So how can we interpret, or how can we understand happiness and enjoyment based on those experiences? So why do you think we experience happiness and enjoyment when we win, when we play well, when we're in the zone, when we're feeling in control? What do we understand from those experiences? Like, why do you
Feels
think our
like
bodies
reward for hard work.
Say that again, Lara?
Feels like reward for hard work.
Reward for hard work. I like that. Ego. So basically, how would you define that, or could you expand on that comment? Ego. Invincibility. I like that. Maybe that's like a confirmation or validation of our ego. Maybe that's how I would phrase it based on your ego question mark. Dopamine rush. Yeah. Okay, we're getting somewhere with this. So that's perfect. When you think about a dopamine rush, let me just put the validation of ego. When you think about a dopamine rush, what it tells us to our brain is basically we are in the right direction. We're making progress towards our goal. We are experiencing success. So keep going in that direction. Does that make sense? Enjoyment and happiness is a signal from our body to keep doing what we're doing in that moment because it's working. But what happens when there is too much happiness and enjoyment, and maybe you start to feel this invincibility? Like, what kind of unproductive or unhelpful reactions we might have in those situations where we're too happy at the table, we're enjoying ourselves too much at the table. What could come out of those situations? Yeah, start playing too loose. If you think about invincibility, what does that look like? What does that sound like? Taking more risks. Yeah, playing too loose, playing too much, playing too long. overconfidence. I can outplay everyone. I'm better than everyone. So what's interesting is this validation of ego might start to turn into something less productive, less useful. Yeah, the too many chips syndrome. I think that's what Lara, you talked about earlier with that experience of building a huge stack, but then giving it away because we become more overconfident, or we start playing too loose, taking more risks. So those are maybe unproductive reactions to when we feel enjoyment, we feel happiness, or we experience success. What about productive reactions? Like what does that look like? How can we use happiness, enjoyment? Maybe that's a less intuitive one. Take more risks in a good way. What does that mean, Michael? That we have motivation. Following process more. Yeah. Okay. So you're not you're not afraid to pull the trigger, basically. So you're playing your game. Following your process, playing your game. Ooh, you trust your abilities. I like that. Confidence, yeah. Maybe it's not the case with you guys, because I feel like you've described a lot of interesting situations, but I feel like some people, they don't spend enough time with that emotion. Like they don't spend enough time in joy or happiness or satisfaction. And so as soon as they win a tournament, as soon as they enjoy some success, they are already looking for the next thing, right? They're never satisfied with their current situation. They always look for the next challenge, which is a good thing, but sometimes it leads with this never-ending insatisfaction with your situation. And maybe something that wasn't mentioned that I'd like to add to this list of things that we can do when we have this experience of happiness and enjoyment is to actually take time to notice your progress, appreciate what you have achieved so far, list things you are grateful for. Because oftentimes I feel like we forget about those moments and we spend most of our times in other emotions, because let's be realistic, when we play poker, MTTs, 85%, 90% of the time we'll probably won't spend in happiness and enjoyment. So sometimes just remembering the progress we've made, the things we're grateful for, that's actually a good way to spend more time in the emotion of happiness and enjoyment, spending more time in this emotion. So basically what we saw here are unproductive reactions. So maybe things we want to avoid when we start feeling the dopamine rush, when we start to play well, to win. We want to be mindful of those unproductive reactions and maybe try to focus more of our attention on the productive reactions. So using that motivation maybe to play a bit more in weeks, months, days where we're experiencing more success, just because we have more of that energy, that motivation, but also reminding ourselves that we can probably trigger some feelings of happiness by doing those exercises of noticing your progress, appreciate what you have achieved so far, and also listing things that you're grateful for in your life. So that's about it for happiness. Any questions before we move forward? No, doesn't look like it. Cool. Let's look at anger. Ooh, anger. So in what situation do we experience anger in poker? Let's do the same exercise we did earlier with happiness. So what are those situations? Poorly. Yeah, mistakes. Avoidable mistakes, oftentimes. Sounds like there's a history here of people slow rolling other people. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce your name, Wooge, but we'll get back to that question because I feel like maybe that's attached to another emotion. So playing poorly, mistakes. Maybe put variance in there. Probably one of the most tilting things. Bad players sucking out on you. If we take this example, bad players sucking out on you. What is that feeling? How do you interpret anger? What does that tell you if a bad player sucks out on you with a bad play? It's unfair, injustice, entitlement. I like that. So what we will realize when we do the next emotion after that one is anger most of the time is directed towards others and the environment. So basically things outside of our control. Like if we look at the example of bad players sucking out on you, variance, playing poorly, mistakes as well, but this is more towards yourself. But I feel like this feeling of unfairness, injustice, entitlement is a big part of how basically the framework of anger. And what we can understand from this is there's something stopping us from achieving our goals. If that makes sense. So that's my interpretation. There's an obstacle in the way that's stopping us from achieving our goals. So if it's to be successful in poker, then variance, losing to bad players, those are all obstacles or injustice. The injustice could be subjective here. Like if you feel like you're entitled to winning, then every time you lose, you will feel like this is an injustice to your game because you're so good at the game. And so every time you feel anger, there's probably an obstacle, you or other people, so or the environment that is stopping you from achieving your goals. And if you look, pay attention to that image. What does our body want to do in those situations? We want to act. We want to take action. And if we want to take action, some of the time we'll take action in an unproductive, unhelpful, destructive way. So what are those destructive reactions that we have when we feel anger? Like what typical actions do we have when we feel tilt? Yeah, punting your stack is a good example. Mouse breaking, keyboard breaking, I'm guessing as well. Yelling. Yeah. Basically punching a monitor. Yeah. So anything to get some of that energy out, right? If we look at our body, we're ready to take action. So we need to take some actions. And most of the time, or some of the time, we'll start doing those things that we don't like. So punting our stack, mouse breaking, yelling, saying unkind things to ourselves. Yep. Having a stress ball, that's actually something interesting, right? So you're getting some of that energy out using a stress ball or a punching bag. Yeah, maybe that's actually a more productive way to react in those situations than punting your stack. You guys have any other examples or ideas that might be more rational or mental of how you could use that energy at the table? Yeah, we have deep breathing and reframing. Oh, working out. I'll put that in there. Yep. But you're playing, you're in the moment, so you can't stop. Technically, you wouldn't be able to stop playing and just go for a workout. So what can we do in that moment? I see deep breaths, which is great, and reframing. Yeah. So the reframing of without suckouts and bad beats, there would be no money in poker. Yeah, slow down the urges to do that stuff. Injecting logic. Yep. Injecting logic. So if you inject logic, or let me keep that idea in mind. So when we talk about anger and tilt, oftentimes we'll talk about tunnel vision, right? We're only focusing our attention on that bad beat, that mistake, that variance, that bad player. So what if we were focusing our attention somewhere else? What could we focus on at the table? What's something we actually have control over? The next hand.
So something that I've been doing lately, like if I punt off in a big pot or just get unlucky in a hand, like going from 80 to 30 big blinds, I just take some deep breaths and say, all right, I had 80 big blinds, I have 30 big blinds now. I know how to play 30 big blinds, and I just go from there.
Yep. I think you've got something very interesting here. You're using injecting logic as well. I know how to play 30 big blinds. So let's move on from there. Let's go there. So I think that's quite attached to this idea of focusing on the next hand and focusing on your decision-making process. I'm no longer playing with 80 big blinds. I'm playing with 30 big blinds. So what does that mean in that situation? I have 30 big blinds. How do I play 30 big blinds? So that's what I want to focus on. I don't want to focus on getting my stack back, playing more aggressively to suck out the fish that probably sucked me out the first time. So focusing on things that actually we control.
Similar to Michael, I do that as well. And then also sometimes pretend that I actually used to have half of what I have. So like just on Saturday when I literally went from 80 big blinds to 30 big blinds over 3 hands played correctly, I just tried to mentally pretend I had 15 big blinds and just doubled up. And I mean, it sounds stupid, like it wouldn't really work, but it kind of does. That if you actually had 15 big blinds, you'd be thrilled you have 30 instead of trying to, remember where you were, because it doesn't make any difference anyway.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're using a lot of things here, like both the reframing, injecting logic, but basically what you're describing to me when you tell me instead of having 15 big blinds, I have 30, you're basically bringing yourself back in a state of happiness and enjoyment. You're being grateful for having 30 big blinds instead of 15.
Yep.
So you're even able to reframe yourself into feeling a more productive or helpful emotion. Instead, I notice I didn't say a positive emotion here, but you're able to put yourself in a more productive mindset, mental state mindset. So yeah, I love that example. Thanks again.
I also try to pretend, because I'm not a pro compared to a lot of people who are here, but I just try to think like, what would Ape Styles do here? And is he gonna, sit and just like punt off his 9 remaining big blinds? No, he's gonna try to play it optimally, and so that's what I need to do.
That's probably one of the best advice I could give everyone, regardless of the emotion you're experiencing, regardless of your situation. If you're able to change your perspective and ask yourself, what would a friend do in that situation? What would a better player do in that situation? Then you can actually find an answer and find a productive reaction to your situation. So I love that. All right, Anger, any questions before we move on? No. So here, just I guess a quick summary. Anger mostly things outside of our control. We're talking about unfairness, injustice. And I'm just doing this because if now we look at disgust for a moment, and we take a look at the picture as well. So what situations would bring disgust, but not only disgust, it could be shame, guilt, embarrassment. So what are those situations? Making a bad play, yep. Puns. Yeah, I feel like anger and disgust are closely related most of the times. Sloppy mistakes, making a bad play, puns. So yeah, so yeah, oh, I think that's the perfect nuance. So mistakes where you don't know what to do, you would feel more anger in those situations because you're clueless, if I may say, about the situation. You don't know what to do, so it's outside of your control. But if you're making a mistake where you knew what you should have been doing, this is where shame, guilt, disgust will appear. So in one example, you have no control over the situation because you're clueless about what to do. In the other situation, you actually knew what you could have done, but you didn't do it. So I think that's a big difference that's worth mentioning. Misclick, misread. I like also the example of doing it in front of people. Yep. And so what would be a general interpretation or understanding of why we feel disgust in those situations? Like, why do we feel like we want to puke in those situations? Yeah, embarrassment. So what do you do when you feel embarrassed? Ooh, okay, Michael has something here. We feel like it's preventable. We should know better. I think that's we should know better. So my own definition, I guess, to put more words into what we've described, is we don't like how we reacted. We didn't like one of our action or decision at the table, so we're disgusted by it. So in those situations, we think we should have done or could have done better. So those are words you want to pay attention to in those situations. Should have, could have done better. This is when we typically feel disgusted. And basically, disgust is an insatisfaction with ourselves towards the situation, typically. It could be insatisfaction towards other. But so next time you feel disgusted, shame, or guilt, basically it's telling you there's something about my actions or decisions that I don't like. And so the way I like to frame it is this disgust is an advocate for change, changing your behaviors, changing your approach, because the decisions you've made, they didn't work. And that's basically your body telling you, by feeling shame, guilt, or embarrassment, something about your game is not working. So if you're making misreads or misclicks, if you're making bad plays, that probably tells you your game is not strong enough, or maybe you're playing too many tables. So basically, your body in that situation is telling you, hey, buddy, maybe you need to slow down and play less tables if you want to stop making misreads and misclicks. So that's basically one way to frame it. So it's an advocate for change. It's telling you your process right now is not working. And I actually want to scroll back up in the chat. Let's see if I can find it. So Whoosh comment, let me post it back. What if you don't like your progress or what you've achieved, so you don't have a backbone to be happy to? Basically, what you're describing to me here is a feeling of disgust, shame, or guilt. And so in what situation did that feeling come from? And so the situation is telling you what you need to work on. So if you feel like you're not satisfied with your progress because you're making bad plays, maybe you need to go back and study more, learn more theory about the game. If you're making misreads or misclick, maybe you're playing too many tables. Maybe you need to cut down on your tables. So this is information that your body is telling you. So maybe I've walked one step too fast here, but basically unproductive reactions. Let's take a moment to look at unproductive reactions to embarrassment, shame, guilt, or disgust. Like, what do we typically do in those situations? Negative self-talk. Oh yeah, let me use what I said earlier. So unhelpful, or let's say unskillful self-talk. How about that? So unproductive self-talk. So unproductive narrative. I'm so bad. I'm so stupid. I don't deserve to win. I deserve to lose that pot. Rumination. Yep. And so when we start spiraling down in those unproductive reactions like unhelpful self-talk or rumination, what typically happens to you when you play? Like I'm curious about your experience when those situations happens. Yeah, not focused. Ooh, hyper vigilant. Okay, some people have different experiences. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes it makes me feel like I want to give up completely on my session. Is that something that happens to you as well? Yeah, maybe a feeling of giving up. Also, maybe a feeling to a need to compensate, right? So maybe I'll start watching a video that makes me more happy. So like maybe I'll try to cheer myself up by distracting myself from that feeling of shame and guilt. So instead of experiencing it and trying to change something, maybe I'll just completely avoid the feeling and try to distract myself with some YouTube videos. I lose patience when that happens. Yeah, you get more impatient. So productive reactions when we feel disgust, shame, or guilt. And remember, it's an advocate for change. So what can we do better next time? What can we change about the situation to make it better? Yeah, it's our motivation to study more and to change. Next time you feel shame, guilt, embarrassment, don't start this unhelpful narrative about yourself that you're so stupid and but take action actually and try to figure out what do you need to change and take the steps accordingly. So yeah, take action like decreasing number of table, studying more, like that. So that's discuss for you. We have 2 more emotions left. Fear. That's why we study is what I say, what I said when I make a mistake. That's perfect. All right, let's look at fear. In what situation do we experience fear in poker? On the river. I like it. The great unknown. Downswings, nice. bubble of a tournament. Moving up stakes, yep. High pressure when mistakes are costly, yep. When we think about the future, yeah. Uncertainty of the future, the unknown. I'm gonna put that here, future. A session, yeah, 1v1 session with Jordan. Your fear here is probably about being embarrassed or feeling shame or guilt because he will probably spot some mistakes in your game. But embrace the fear that you probably have made some mistakes. So what can you change? What can you improve in your game because of that emotion? So without the emotion, maybe you would take his advice casually and not implement them in your game. But because of those emotions, we take action. So I guess just to go a bit faster, our interpretation right there, the unknown is the future, uncertainty. We're moving up stake. We're experiencing a downswing. We're playing a bubble, so high pressure situations. How we can interpret or understand fear, it's basically there's a risk, there's uncertainty, there's a threat or a goal. Let's say you're trying to build a bankroll. If you're in a downswing, you're probably going to feel some fear, anxiety. If you're trying to win that big tournament to get that big pay jump, those are all examples where it might go well or it might not go well. And so we see those situations as there's a risk, there's uncertainty. But what's great about risk and uncertainty is it gives us some concentration, some alertness. I think that's how we say it. Okay, I see. So Michael tells me he's enjoying the session. Do you guys want to spend another 10 minutes? Maybe we can take more time than like 10 or 15 minutes. We'll go over the time, but I'll try to maybe improve on that later. But yeah, okay. So let's continue. I'll take more time. So yeah, when we're experiencing fear, anxiety, it's simply because there's a risk we need to pay attention to. There is uncertainty. So actually, that's kind of great. It's like, thank you, brain, thank you, body, for telling me I need to pay attention right now. Like if you compare yourself playing a $5 tournament or a $100 buy-in tournament, for example, like which one will you pay more attention to? Most likely the $100 tournament. So we are more alert, more focused when there is a certain amount of fear. But what happens when there's too much fear? Like, let's look at unproductive reactions to fear. It's basically related, yeah. Risk-averse decision, love it. Yeah, not willing to pull the trigger, not implementing strategy. Yeah, you're all talking about the same thing. Yeah, decreased aggression. You're trying to conserve what you've accumulated, what you've won, what you've gained. Maybe this applies more to cash game, but think about how when you're in a winning session, maybe you stop playing, right? You want to book that win. Maybe you don't take shots at higher stakes, even though you're qualified to. Basically, we're staying in our comfort zone. Would you agree? Mm-hmm. And if you remember the very first video I showed in the first seminar, how we can change fear or anxiety in excitement, how can we basically transform fear or use fear to find some productive reactions in those situations. Like, what would you do when you're in the bubble of a big tournament, when you're moving up stakes, when you're in a high pressure situations? How do we use fear? What can you do? Yeah, that's basically, yeah, it's part of the definition. So yeah, increase focus, alertness again. And so that means that if, yeah, interpret fear as excitement. Yep. Excitement. Maybe I'll put this. This is a challenge. Like, every time you're in a anxiety-inducing situation, this is a challenge. Am I gonna walk up to this challenge or retreat? We're going deep here. The only thing to fear is fear itself. Wow. It reminds me of a movie or something where they said this this quote exactly, I think. Was it Coach Carter or something? Yeah, I think that was it. False evidence appearing real. Yeah. And so maybe fear is also telling us, are you ready for the challenge? Are you good enough? And maybe you don't feel like you're good enough. And so if you don't feel like you're good enough, you don't have enough confidence, what could you do with that fear or anxiety? What is that telling you? Like, when you're in a spot where you don't know how to play the river, for example, and you start feeling fear and anxiety, be more prepared next time. Wow, I love that. Yeah, work harder, study more. So again, you feel that fear, you feel that anxiety, you wouldn't feel it if you're in a comfortable situation. So basically that fear is telling you, in that specific situation, there may be something you need to work on more. Maybe you need to just pay more attention. So yeah, see it as a gift. And so do you start to see kind of a recurring pattern here where all of those emotions actually are helpful to our situation? Let's move to the last emotion, probably the trickiest one, because we often, I'd say, an underrated emotion, because we don't sit with that emotion. We don't live that emotion enough, in my opinion. We tend to just avoid it. And so in what situations related to poker do we experience sadness? Or disappointment could be another word for sadness. Yeah. Resting, tournament, downswing, big putts. Mistakes. When you feel like you don't understand anything, basically you're lost, right? Missing out on big opportunities, massive coolers. Yeah, all disappointing situations. Let's take this example where there's maybe 15 players left in a tournament. You have like 80 big blinds. The chip leader has basically the same amount as you, and you go face to face with that player and they bad beat you, or there's a massive cooler. Yeah, Matt, I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I feel like maybe you remember that situation. Yeah. And in those situations, right, the word that seems to be coming up is there is a certain loss. There's been a loss. And because I see Lara also wrote mistakes. maybe there's been also a failure to attain a goal. So you had this expectation that you wouldn't make mistakes. You made a mistake. You busted out of a tournament because of your mistake. Fear of not getting back the same situation. Yeah. There's been a loss, I guess, let's put it that way, of an important opportunity, right? So you feel sadness here because you never know, or you don't know if that situation will ever come again. And if we pay more attention to the picture, the body heat map here, how do you feel in your body, in your mind, when those situations arise? Empty, yeah. So, yeah, hopeless. So how would that translate into a non-productive reactions, or maybe more of a normal reaction? Like that's, I guess, not helpful, or not help. Yeah, lack of motivation. Thank you. Maybe a loss of interest as well. You no longer want to play poker. I don't want to experience this anymore. And so in those situations, I feel like because we lose interest or motivation, we're going to try to distract ourselves. So we're going to avoid the feeling. Yeah. Questioning if it's still worth it to keep playing or to pursue this career. Yeah. So yeah, sadness, I feel like, is kind of a different emotion, has a different way to a different framework than other emotions, because the unproductive reactions are actually normal, and we just need to sit with those with those feelings and reactions. Sometimes a lack of motivation, loss of interest, even questioning our skills, abilities, and if we want to continue. So now that we have all that questioning, all that lack of motivation and loss of interest, what's one way we can use that sadness to tell ourselves, how can we basically turn the page? How can we reframe that, or how can we use that sadness in a productive way? There's an emptiness. We lack motivation or interest, or we lack purpose. We're questioning whether we should keep playing the game. Resiliency to adversity is one of the greatest skills in poker. I agree. How do you develop it? How, like, basically, I think Matt gave a good answer: reflection. And so reflection towards what? Zooming out long term. If you think zooming out long term, what comes to mind is basically your goals, right? Yeah. And so just reflect on your goals. Reconnect to your purpose. Like, why did you start playing poker in the first place? Because basically sadness is telling you you've lost track of your purpose, of your goals. You don't know in which direction you want to go. So if you take some time actually to reflect in those situations, and so that's what I'm advocating for here, is when you lose that big tournament, and maybe Matt, you want to share your experience, when you lost that big tournament, did you went on and play the next day, or did you take some time off to reflect on on the situation, what you wanted to do next. Like, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you want to share your experience, that'd be great.
You hear me?
Yep, perfectly.
Yeah, so I've kind of never really taken time off in poker. So I kind of even remember saying in an interview, like a few hours after that, kind of like the way I tried to interpret it right after was that I was 21. And so maybe like, let's say I won and I won like $8 million. Like my goal in poker, like why I was in the game never really was to like get rich. It was more to, I played sports all growing up and it was the competitive atmosphere. And so if you kind of like, I probably wouldn't have like the drive or the competitiveness anymore, I guess. And I probably would have like moved on to like other things right away just because like, oh, what else can you accomplish then type of thing.
That's, yeah, keep going.
So like, I mean, it was kind of more of a, and it's kind of, I guess, been my drivers like, and like live poker, I've still never like had a televised final table and stuff. And it's still kind of like a driver and motivation and stuff. So, and motivation for like a big tournament win still and to like keep working hard.
Yeah, that's nice. And basically what I understand from your experience and you sharing this is you were quickly able, I guess, to reframe that situation in how basically your purpose or reason why you play poker is for the competitive aspect and not necessarily the money. So you're already able to direct your attention or refocus on your goals or refocus on your purpose for why you play poker.
Yeah, and it's kind of like maybe even not like knowing that purpose maybe beforehand. Maybe that was more of a being able to maybe it helped identify the purpose and vision, I guess.
Oh, wow, that's gold. And so I love what you just said. And just to put it in perspective, I would be curious if you had that purpose beforehand, if you had those goals or this clear direction, do you think you would have taken the bad beat with like less emotions, or do you think it would have affected you less had you have the purpose or the goals beforehand, if that makes sense?
I don't know. I mean, obviously it's disappointing, I guess, is more of the like the emotion that you feel right away. Just kind of I mean, I had been playing for like 3 or 4 years for a living full time at the point, and just like when you're working so hard for something to get really close to it, and then like what we've been talking about, like things out of your control. Obviously, that's like hurtful or disappointing in a way, but that kind of like zooming out and looking at the long term and stuff is kind of what helps, I guess, in that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that answer. And so, yeah, and I also love how you said, just going back to this idea that those difficult experiences, those difficult situations actually helped you maybe figure out what was your purpose in those situations, maybe helping you figure out what you want to do next, or if you want to keep going. So I love what you shared. And yeah, so what to take away from this is probably this idea of reflection. Maybe you need to take a step back and figure out, why am I still playing this game? Why am I pursuing those goals? And that's why sadness and disappointment are here for, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, even like just the couple minutes talking out here, like last couple months kind of been in like just kind of like a little rut. Like I wouldn't say a downswing, or haven't been like maybe a little lack of motivation and stuff, and just being like just talking out loud like here is kind of just reminder of that vision and the purpose and like why like why playing, like had a rough Sunday yesterday, like doesn't really bother me too much, but just talking about like it doesn't really matter just in terms of like it's just about, I play poker because of the like competitiveness and the strategicness of it. And that's kind of the why I like playing.
Mhm. Yeah, that's awesome. And it's almost like if you remind yourself of this on a daily basis, yeah, we're not robots and you still want to play and make money like that, that's understandable. The more you're able to remind yourself of your purpose, the more you're able to keep your attention there and not picturing yourself trying to win a tournament that you're not necessarily likely to win. And yeah, people are, yeah, thanks for sharing that experience. That was quite insightful.
Yeah. Actually, I have one quick thing that's kind of related, and
sure.
it could be like everyone always talks about like World Series of Poker bracelets, and like kind of if you're a tournament player, that's kind of what a lot of people do. And I used to like really want to have a bracelet. I don't have a bracelet, and now I kind of just don't care. And I don't know if that's like a deflection of, well, I don't have one, so I'm kind of trying to deflect that emotion that I don't have one, or more if it's just like a maturity of realizing like I mostly play no limit hold'em tournaments. They're large fields. Like I'm not very likely to win one, and so it's not really a good expectation to have. I mean, it's kind of related to this, but that's kind of something I've thought about in the past.
Do you think, if you had to guess, which one do you think it would be? Like,
I'm guessing it's the latter of like the kind of realizing like I'm probably not a favorite to win one in like 10 years. Like that's probably like 300 tournaments that I would play. Like I'm probably still not a favorite to win one. And so it's kind of a realization, like to connect to last week, like matching expectations to like the stimuli. The stimulus being like winning the bracelet.
Yeah. I think that's, oh, I think there's a comment here. Maybe it's a battle between the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other. And that's where I wanted to go next. So what would that mean for you to win a bracelet?
We've talked about like a little bit like confirmation or just kind of, I mean, if we look at happiness, just the interpretation, like reward for hard work, validation, those would probably be the two kind of feelings that I would experience.
Yeah, and if we go one step further, maybe there's even if we dig deeper, so what would that validation bring you?
Validation, I guess, is just really more of a kind of interpretation of what others think of you. There's probably more like self-validation, and then there's like kind of the ego validation. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess more just thinking about like the reward for hard work. Like, I guess maybe the reward for hard work should be more interpretive of the zooming out on a graph rather than focusing on like one tournament, really.
Yeah. And even if because I think that's interesting, right? So your goal could be winning a bracelet, but then you realize maybe your goal is the validation you get from other people. And then afterwards, maybe you realize maybe what you're looking for here is a validation of your ego. So we're going deep. And so is there other ways for you to validate your ego that is not reliant on an outcome that you don't control, really?
Yeah, I guess like just reflection and like validation for myself is just kind of like looking back, like I've been playing professionally for 13 years, and like standing the test of time is probably more validation than any single tournament.
Yeah, the sustainability, the ability to be able to play for that long, I think that's a good validation. And what about just like, instead of, because when we think about a tournament, it's like I'll be happy once I win this tournament, or I'll be happy if something happens. But can you be happy, satisfied right now because of the decisions you're making on can you, that's kind of the challenging part I try with almost every poker player I work with, is just being satisfied with the decisions you're making, because that's actually bringing you the satisfaction that you're striving for when winning a tournament.
Yeah, like what you just said, I actually thought of this earlier in the webinar when you said something. I can't remember the name, and I'm really, but one of the kind of old school tournament grinders that I played with, all coming back up in 2006 through 10, he won EPT London for like 1.5 million. And this
Mhm.
guy was like well known. I can't think of who it was now. And I remember him saying, he was like, I don't really feel happy or anything like that. And that was kind of his like validation, where he actually kind of left poker after that, and I ended up actually going back to finance where his school degree was and stuff. And kind of
Mm.
that whole chasing to win that tournament and then realizing, oh, I'm not that happy, like that wasn't kind of the goal type of thing.
Yeah.
So like I kind of reflected on that a little bit earlier when we were talking about happiness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's so I I guess the lesson here, or what the takeaway from that experience that you've just described with this guy winning tournament and not even being satisfied, is actually, and this goes back to seminar number 1, the only moment where you can actually be satisfied and find happiness and joy is in the present moment.
Yeah. And it's kind of just like a reminder that actually like the happiness really, if you look at like people that succeed, like the happiness is really just, and I've said this to students and stuff, you have to like enjoy studying,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to like the best players, I feel like kind of just like they enjoy studying, they enjoy learning about nuances, they enjoy the process of everything rather than the actual results of it.
Wow, that's such a good way to put it. And actually, you're kind of moving one step ahead, because that was my plan for our next session, probably to talk about why we play, and also what are we ready to endure, or like the struggles or challenges we're willing to face in order to be professional poker players. So I think I'll stop that here, and maybe that will be one of the topic for the next seminar. Does that
Perfect.
sound good?
Awesome.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Mhm.